dead spirits. Ali, who was 16, had some friends who watched a horror film and got the idea of trying to use a Ouija board to contact a dead uncle. They thought it would be fun, so they asked Ali to join in one night. And even though he knew it wasn't right, he thought, it's a bit of fun. There can't be any harm in this. So one night, Ali and his 3 friends found an abandoned house in a quiet part of the city and decided to contact the dead uncle. Mike brought along a Ouija board he had found in an old antique bookshop. It had letters, numbers, and strange patterns painted all over it. They sat in a circle in the darkened house and lit some candles. Peter told them to hold hands and sit in a circle around the board resting on a table. He began to chant. "Hi, Uncle Bob. I know it's been a while, but I was wondering, how are you?" The boys giggled and laughed, but nothing happened. Simon laughed and said he was doing it all wrong, so he decided to have a go. "I call upon you in the realm of the dead. Arise, arise from your cold bed. Come forth, in the name of the black throne. Come forth, make yourself known." Suddenly, a gust of wind blew one of the windows open. Ali began to feel scared. But they all laughed at him and made fun. Simon continued and chanted, "I call upon Uncle Bob to come into our soul. We call upon you from the deepest black hole." They thought it was hilarious until, ever so slightly, the table in front of them moved. Ali got even more worried. Peter took over. "Show us yourself. Let us feel your power. Be with us at the witching hour. We call upon you and any dead spirits amongst you. Give us your power like the witch's brew." The table now began to shake even more. Then the floorboards began to creak. Suddenly a sound of voices filled the room. It was the voices of the dead spirits moaning and crying. Ali jumped to his feet, but Peter and Simon, who were holding his hand, pulled him back down. The cries became louder and louder. The room became colder and colder. It was so cold they could see their breath. Ali closed his eyes. Suddenly, one of the chairs in the corner of the room flew up into the air and smashed into a wall. A lampshade above their heads crashed to the floor. A powerful wind began to sweep through the room. All the boys began to get very, very afraid. Stop it! It's not right!" shouted Ali. The boys stopped holding hands and stood up. A sofa flew over their heads and collided with a far wall. Now the entire house began to shake as the moaning of the dead spirits became louder and louder.
"Why have you woken us? Why have you disturbed our sleep?"
The boys, who were now terrified, all ran towards the door, but it was jammed shut. They couldn't get out. "Oh my God, what have we done? What have we done?" cried Simon. The floorboards in the old house began to rip up and fly into the ceiling. A water pipe in the wall ripped itself loose and began showering them in cold water. In the darkened room, the boys could now see the outline of the spirits moving towards them. Their dead skins were pale and white. Some even had eyes and limbs missing. There was a terrible smell that rose up from them. It was the smell of dead flesh. There must have been dozens of them. Frantic now, the boys began to bang on the door, screaming for help. Simon turned and in desperation screamed, Go back, evil spirits, go back! We're sorry, we didn't mean any harm!" But the dead forms only came closer and closer.
"Why have you woken us? Why have you disturbed our sleep?"
Peter grabbed a piece of wood and jammed it into the door and managed to pry it open. All the boys piled out of the house in stark staring terror. As they left the old house, they could hear the spirits crying and moaning as furniture continued to be smashed and flung in every direction. Out in the cold air, they looked back to see the old house begin to collapse in upon itself. Windows were smashed, Bricks were being pulverized and concrete was being shattered. Then all was silent. It was over. Ever since that terrifying night, none of the boys ever spoke about what had happened. But every now and then, in the middle of the night, Ali could still hear the voices of the dead spirits calling to him, calling to him, calling to him.
Why have you woken us? Why have you disturbed our sleep?